It's 5:15, so we'll call this meeting to order. With everyone, please rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance with me.
Our youngsters.
Bob, can you please say the school board norms?
Surely. The board developed norms are: decisions will be based on the board's strategic plan, its mission, and what's best for students. The board will act as stewards of tax dollars. Board members will complete foundation work to be prepared for meetings. Meetings will be efficient. All perspectives will be voiced and heard. All board members will maintain a professional decorum.
Thank you. We have no public communication. Are there any conflicts of interest to declare this evening? Jason?
Under new business, number 4, letter D, ratification of teachers' negotiated agreement for 2019. Obviously, I'm living with and married to a public school teacher here, so.
Madam President, I would move that we allow Jason to vote.
I have a motion to allow Jason to vote. Is there a second? That is seconded by Bob. Any discussion? All those in favor allowing Jason to vote on the item of teacher negotiated agreement, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. You are allowed to vote. Thank you. Moving on to the consent agenda, can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Motion by Greg. Seconded by Roger. Any discussion on the consent agenda? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on to our regular agenda, we have nothing under recognition or correspondence, so moving on to superintendent's report. Dr. Leck?
Thank you. I have provided my written report, and I'll reference just a few things. Coming up here this week, we have our evaluation through the North Dakota Department of Career and Technical Education. They'll be here on the 9th and 10th to review the programs that we have in place, ask questions as our practices, and give us feedback on what we do well, and of course areas in which we can improve. So I'll provide any additional information for you as necessary, but just wanted to make you aware that that's taking place already. I did provide a link to some of the submitted materials that they've asked us to provide, and like I said, we're looking forward to the feedback of having the experts in our building and letting us know, like I said, what we're doing well and areas that we can improve. I did also include information related to our REA, our SEC. Sometimes our REAs are known, at least they have predominantly been known for providing professional development, and they certainly do that. That is a primary driver for the success of our REAs, but our REAs do a lot more than that. And if you think, as I mentioned in my written report, you're looking to leverage 40 districts or 40 plus districts in our area to see what other kinds of administrative or other kinds of functions, efficiencies you can find. So while a lot of that has to do with the professional development, like I said, a lot of the value that we see, at least on the outside, is looking at professional development. That's what our teachers know a lot about, the different opportunities, improving academic literacy, MTSS conferences, things like that really build the capacity of our teachers. And I did provide a link to all the different PD opportunities that have been taken advantage of in Jamestown just in the past year. But I also want to draw the attention to a lot of the administrative functions. We were able to negotiate a pretty reasonable cost for AppleTrack. That is the online portal we use for human resource management. So people apply through AppleTrack, and it certainly helps us from an HR standpoint. And like I said, we're able to get a better price because of our ability to leverage the SEC. We also do Medicaid billing through SEC, they manage that. That is a huge human resource. We get a lot of return on investment from that, not only from getting additional reimbursement back from Medicaid, things that we didn't know, or, these are experts then that do this, and we're seeing an increase in reimbursement, which more than paid for the cost of this. But we're also seeing the savings in terms of human resources. People aren't spending the same time doing those reimbursements. That's being managed through the SEC, so that's another value. The SEC writes grants that support different activities. As you're aware, we have a 21st Century grant that provides after-school programming. That is coordinated through the SEC. They write that grant, they manage the grant. That's one example. They are our consortium for Title III funding, so we pool those resources together with the other school districts that receive Title I or Title III. We're able to do more just through that consortium and through that consolidation. The one last thing I'll mention that isn't on here, but something that the SEC is looking at is, we've seen a great deal of value in our district from working as a self-insured health insurance fund. The SEC is looking to see if they can get schools, smaller districts than ours, that couldn't afford to do this on their own, to coordinate, create a consortia to self-fund for smaller districts, the Weinemeers of the world. That actually could see a value to our district too, because if they manage a larger pool of dollars, we could essentially maintain the same plan and reduce our administrative costs just by funneling some dollars through there. I'm not suggesting that we do that. I'm just suggesting that it's a potential option down the road as we learn more about what is happening. And that's, we actually connected Hayes with the SEC to have some conversations about this. And from what I understand, a lot of districts are looking at the potential to get behind that. And I give a lot of credit to Kyle for a lot of these, Kyle Davis and the director and the staff there. A lot of that work for all of those administrative functions have funneled through their office and getting these opportunities out for us. The Medicaid reimbursement, for example, and the health insurance pooling, that's all come from that office. And like I said, just I think a great opportunity. I just don't want us to think of the SEC only as professional development. They do that, but it's much, much more than that. The other thing I wanted to make the board aware of is we've talked about our funding formula, and we've referenced in the past that we get an allocation for REAs, but that's not money we get. That's the mechanism that takes those funds from the state to the REAs. We don't see it, but we have to deduct it. Okay, and I just want to reinforce, that's just the mechanism. If REAs went away tomorrow, that's not money that's going to flow into our district. That's just the mechanism that's used to determine how much money goes to each REA. Okay, and I think sometimes people see that and they see that as money lost. Well, that's money that we could have that could go to our district and we could do our own PD or we could do our own administrative functions. That's not how it works. It's just a mechanism to decide how much money goes to each REA. So I just want to reinforce that. We'll have some more coming up next meeting, but just wanted to provide a little bit of an overview for some of the grants that you'll be asked to approve. They're all smaller grants, but every grant helps. There's a library collection development grant, a Fargo-Moorhead area foundation CTE grant, and then a building tomorrow's leader grant. And I did outline what all of those for. There isn't a significant, or there isn't any in-kind or direct match outside of what we already provide, like the library. The FM area foundation CTE grant. There is an in-kind contribution, but it's something we're already committed to anyway. It's just maximizing our dollars. But that's $12,000+ that we didn't have before. And so I applaud in all of these instances. It's been high school administrators or staff. I know Kathleen Berkeley was involved with the library collection development grant, and Darby Heinert and Adam Gaylor were involved with 2 of the other 3, and Mr. Gaylor was also involved with the library collection development grant. So you have a lot of people doing good work to make sure that we're maximizing all the grant dollars we can. A reminder for the superintendent evaluation timeline, and I'm sure that'll get discussed later in terms of making sure that you complete those, getting ready for this formative assessment. And then I draw your attention to I think it's important that we reinforce, the work that we do I've called it the good governance dividend. And I put a link to my dissertation in it, not that I expect you to read it, but just that there is, research behind these things. But it is, there is a great value in what you're doing as a board with developing yourselves around those 6 competencies of effective governance. And it's important that you do that. I think it's important work, and I think it's important that people know that you've made this commitment to board education, to developing yourselves as effective board members. Without that, that's much harder. Then you fall upon it by accident. And this board is very purposeful in how you challenge yourselves to be the best boards that you can be, so you can operate with the best of governance. And I think that's very valuable, and I hope that people understand that, and that it does make a difference. That that effective boards, boards that operate the right way, there is a direct correlation to student achievement. That's founded in research. You can look at the Lighthouse studies from the Iowa School Boards Association that has found a direct correlation between those things. That's what I say about when I say the good governance dividend. It makes a difference. When you effectively govern, there is a direct correlation to how students achieve. And I just think it's important, and I want to applaud you all for that commitment, because it's something that makes a difference in this room, but it makes a difference outside of this room when you're talking classrooms. So thank you for what you do.
Thank you, Dr. Lack. Any questions or comments? Diane?
I wanted to go back to the grants. I was interested in this one that called the Building Tomorrow's Leaders Grant. That looks really good, and I was wondering how you would see that money being applied to the freshmen, going to city council meetings, or what would they be doing?
It's a good question. It's a continuation of the purchase of a curriculum that can be used in that classroom. We're actually one of the few schools in the state that requires civics and then has the senior government component as well. We're a handful, one of a handful. And this curriculum that this grant supports would be provided in the civics classroom. So, like I said, it just supports what's happening already in that classroom. And it's a continuation of last year.
Any other? Heidi?
I just wanted to make sure everyone's aware that I'm the Region 7 representative for our REA, the Southeast Education Cooperative. So if you have any ideas or things that you see that might be better done in collaboration, let me know and I can take it back to the board. It's been very interesting on this board. We've met a lot of needs of school districts that were unmet or haven't been able to be always met by the school because of the resources that they have. And it's a collaboration of resources, as well as we also collaborate with other REAs. And so it's one of the most efficient organizations I've ever been on. Efficiently used dollars. And again, because we collaborate with the districts, but also we collaborate with each other as well. So thank you.
Jason?
Just a quick question, the Career Tech Ed evaluation, is that still a 5-year cycle?
Yes, but it sounds like this is a new process. This is something they haven't, this is an eval process they haven't used in the past. So we actually are the first ones with this new process. So we'll see how it goes.
And then just real quick too, on the personnel hiring forms, I noticed some paras were increased hours due to new schedule. Is that because of our PLCs or?
So it's actually related to the increased schedule at those buildings. The hours have increased, so rather than having 20 minutes without paras, we've increased the time. So not directly related to PLCs, but
Heidi?
related to the schedule. Thanks.
So that was the legislative hours that we're required to do now, right? That's
Correct, because they changed the middle school hours. They're now half an hour longer than the requirements were before. Yeah.
Very good. And as Dr. Lecht mentioned, we'll be coming up on the superintendent evaluation timeline. And so I will remind you again at the conclusion of the meeting, but if anybody needs to leave early, make sure that you do conclude your evaluation. And then Amy and I will work to see what sections you may have missed, and I will be contacting you to remind you. And when I do that, you will only have a few days to complete it. So do so promptly. If you don't receive an email or a text message from me, then you're good to go. So then we'll go ahead and move on into board education. Strategic competencies, driving readers, budget update. Dr. Leck.
Okay, so, normally a grant isn't something that we would include in a piece of board education. The Striving Readers Grant, however, is a pretty substantial grant, and I think because of the scope of it, it makes a lot of sense to review that, and I wanted to make sure everybody is fully aware of where we're at in the cycle, all the activities that take place. And so I want to draw your attention first to the summary page. If you want to open up that link. In the summary page, I just want to reinforce that the total grant amount is $1.24 million over the course of that 3 years. So again, it's a pretty substantial commitment that has taken place. Joe Hagelin, Brandy Ewell, and myself, not last June, but the June prior, spent a lot of June writing this grant, and we were certainly excited at the end of July when we were notified that we did get the grant, because it is substantial. But I also then want to draw your attention to the total amounts and how they differ from year to year. If you remember, when we talked initially, the grant award in the first 2 years was a little bit over $400,000 per year, and then the last year was about $430,000. So if you look at, how that's disseminated, you might ask the question of why is that? Well, the easiest answer there is because we were notified so late of the award, and because personnel is a big piece of this grant, instructional coaches, literacy coordination, it didn't make a lot of sense to hire the best available. We wanted to make sure that we had the best people. And so we tried to do something different for that first year to make sure that we had a broad pool, to make sure that we were getting exactly the right fit for that literacy coordinator and for those instructional coach positions. We were very fortunate to find somebody in Caroline Thompson, whose contract you approved last year, at the end of the year last year, somebody that has great deal of literacy experience, EL experience, grant management experience. It's like the sun opened up and the clouds opened up, the sun shone down and said, "Here's Caroline." She couldn't have been a better fit, and so we were able to start her a little bit early in year one. But a lot of that professional salary, what we had devoted in our grant towards that amount, we just weren't able to spend it. So we carried over a big portion of that into year two, and that's where you can see obviously $607,000 devoted in year two from the Striving Readers Grant. And I'll go through each of these activities. And then last year kind of gets back to normal with $452,000 devoted to the activities of Striving Readers. And as you remember, this is a birth to grade 12 program. So there was a lot of infrastructure, a lot of groundwork that needed to be done. Brandy Ewell did a lot of that work. I know Joe's done a lot of that work. And then now Lana Meisner is able to devote full time, and she's spending a huge portion, developing that foundation in the Birth to 5. So I just want to take you very quickly through each of these levels. So if you can see, if you look in the middle column, that's the 1920 school year, and then we have a narrative description in each of these, so you can see, what we're taking out of each of these areas in terms of the Striving Readers Grant, a portion of the expenses for Brandy Ewell. If you remember, we hired her to do some of that grant coordination, and then a portion of Mrs. Meisner's literacy coordinator position comes from there. Benefits are in the 200s. The purchase professional and technical services, pre-K reading corps. If you remember, we have reading corps at the elementary levels that supports those that are not quite at grade level and provide some interventions to support them getting to grade level. That is now a possibility at the pre-K level too. And so we offered that out to our 3 primary partners. The only primary partner that was willing to take that on was the On Track Learning Center, and so they have 2 classrooms that are devoted to, that have pre-K reading corps. NDK Read is the online, is an online program based, it's research based through the Waterford Institute. So we have 75 licenses per year devoted to this program. Parents would have access to it at no charge. The cost is $119 that the grant absorbs for those that are interested in doing that program. Has seen, from a research-based standpoint, great success implemented across the state of Utah, in Pennsylvania and New York. Pockets of it. It isn't across the whole state, but they have seen substantial increase in literacy scores. For students, this, again, available at no cost to families. They have to be in that age 4 or 5, and they could sign up and register. They'd need to talk to Mrs. Meisner to get started. But 15 minutes a day, 5 days a week. That's what a child would have to commit to the program to see the results. And we all know that our kindergartners come in at significant gaps, especially in literacy. And if we can close that gap a little bit, that would certainly be something that would benefit those students, benefit the district. But that's NDK Read. Literacy day camps, that's for those, that's one of the activities we're targeting for those below that 4 to 5 range. So providing day camps people could go to at no charge. It's kind of built on that gearing up for kindergarten model where kids and their family and their parent or a caregiver come in together. They work on a literacy activity. The kids stay and they continue to work on a literacy activity. Parents go and or caregivers go and work with the staff on how they can support literacy in their home. Maybe it's how they're talking to their kids. Maybe it's guided reading time. Maybe it is a different activity that they could do at home. Kids leave there with a book. Family leaves there with the family pass to track. So there's an incentive for folks to participate in those programs. There is some professional development. We felt it's been really important that we utilize this grant to build capacity in people. So when you see baby seeds, those are trainings, and we're looking for the train the trainer models. So we get our trainers trained here. So when the grant is gone, we still have trained trainers. So we can still take this training out to daycares, and we're partnering with Ann Carlson so they can get some of this training as well, and other daycare providers that they can get this training. And so again, I mean, our focus is that once this grant is finished, there's still value in the community. They're still able to support literacy even after the 3 years is done. In the equipment, you see Chromebooks, and essentially what we've decided with that is, we want to make sure that there's capacity in our community to take advantage of NDK Read. And what we don't want to see is if there's a family that says, I would love to do that, but I don't have the technology to do it. Well, they could work with us and we could provide them. We've been really focused on the child care side of things. What we've heard interest from families is, I don't have time to do it, but my kid spends 4 days a week at a child care provider. Could you do it there? Absolutely. If there's a child care that needs 3 Chromebooks and they can work, have their students or have the kids work on this, maybe that's an option for them. And so we wanted to provide, again, we want to ensure that there isn't a barrier to use the NDK Read. The last thing is the dues and fees, and that's just related to getting registration costs for the various PD. So questions on birth to 5? K-12 is a little bit easier. Okay. Well, I wanted to spend enough time on birth to 5 because it's outside of our normal activities. So what we did in K through 12 with this budget is really try to enhance what we've already been working on. We feel very good about what we've done with MTSS, what we've done with instructional coaching, and we want to expand that. And so if you look through, you'll see very similar things in the K through 12, but that is enhancing our instructional coaches. We know that we had 3, and through this grant now, we were able to pick up 2 more and have 3 at the elementary, which gets us back to where we were a couple of years ago. One coach designated to the middle school, 1 coach designated to the high school. Already seeing really good results with being able to share those instructional coaches more. And so we're really excited about that. There is additional time for people to spend outside of the school year to try to build capacity. A lot of that devoted to instructional coaches. Make sure that that time that we spend with our teachers is valuable. We also have some ideas to how we can support the work of PLCs in unit planning and common formative assessments with additional stipends that would be paid with teachers. Some of this stuff has to change because our budget changes all the time. As you might see a budget revision that comes through at some point this year, because we have to be able to afford everything that's in this plan. But there is some fluidity to that. And then the payment of substitute teachers, we're providing a lot of professional development, K-12. We want to make sure that we are maximizing the grant to you for our substitute teachers. You see the benefits are similar. We've spent already some of that professional development time related to PLCs. That's some on-site. We're really very excited about, it says K through 5 on here, and it's actually K through 3. But through Steve Dunn, he's going to do some outstanding work. There's 17 different sessions that he's doing over the course of the year for K through 3. We've partnered with some of our smaller schools in the region. I think it just makes sense. We have the capacity to write this grant. Smaller districts don't, and so we wanted to make sure that this was one activity that we opened up and provide. For us, the cost is the same whether we have 15 teachers sitting in a room, or if we have 15 teachers from Jamestown and one from Lemoore, one from Edgeley, one from Montpelier, and we wanted to make sure that we offered this opportunity out for others because the cost really ends up being the same. And it can help us pay for a little bit of the cost because that particular training is really pretty expensive. So there's that, and we want to do more work with instructional coaching, again, making sure that we get the bang for our buck, a good return on investment from our instructional coaches. Supplies, I think that's pretty self-explanatory, but one of the things I wanted to draw your attention to is books to develop elementary classroom libraries. Right now we operate with a centralized library in every building, pretty standard. What we want to do, what we want to build to, is that there would be classroom libraries. So beyond just the central library, that each classroom would have a classroom library that kids can go to and access books. And so we've devoted in this budget $25 per kid, or the value of $25 per kid for every class for K through 5. And so our teachers would be working together to determine what that classroom library would look like at all those levels. I think that's something, again, significant return on investment, using those dollars now, but paying large dividends in the future because our budget includes $25 per kid, K through 5 in this year, and then another $25 in year 3. So by the end of this grant, you're talking $50 per student devoted just to classroom libraries, and that it would be a significant investment. And maybe a point to bring up with this is it would be a leveled library, and so we want to maximize. So say you're in a single or a dual section building, 2 kindergarten teachers. Well, those kindergarten teachers get together and they develop that library together. So you would have none of those books would be the same because they're going to rotate. So you take that, you think about it from a mobile standpoint. I buy $25 per kid worth of books. You buy $25 worth of kids. Halfway through the year, we switch. So you're getting essentially a doubled library just by being smart. So that's one thing. We're paying through this for our Fast Bridge, which is one of our interim assessments that we use, and then other PD. I just want to scroll through real quick to see if there's anything else I should draw your attention to in 6 through 8 or 9 through 12. I don't think so unless there's questions. And then I will draw your attention to the last tab, which is the administration tab. And part of that, as you can note in the district, the description of the narrative, we funneled a percentage of my salary and benefits through this grant. Because I'm working to oversee the grant, I'm evaluating people, I'm managing the budget. And just, again, a way to efficiently spend dollars. So I would stand for questions if you have any.
Any questions or comments for Dr. Leck on the Striving Readers Grant? Jason?
So the folks we have hired through this grant, we plan on sustaining them beyond? Or are we looking to work that in the budget?
Yes. I think that we need to make a commitment from the instructional coach standpoint. I have some ideas on how we can get there. But that's something that as 2020, 2021 ends, I think we need to have a plan to sustain our instructional coaches. From a literacy coordinator standpoint, that position is a requirement of the grant. And so I would foresee that position at the end of the grant probably not continuing. But the instructional coaches have to. I think we've seen so much benefit, and I think we're really at a place, and to be honest, I think I've said this to the board before, we have 5, I think we could use 7. I'm not suggesting that at the end that we get to that point, but I think, my long-term vision for that would be even expanding that more, but we would have to have the budget to support something like that. I think I can make 5 work by the end of 2020, 2021, but I think that's the goal we should be trying to make, is maintain 5.
Any other questions or comments? Well, the dollar amount is large, and we are definitely utilizing that large dollar amount. And so I'm very interested to see how we continue to use that large dollar amount. Something new for our district, however, is that birth to 5 years. And I know it's something that the state is really focusing on, is early education, early intervention. And I'd be interested to watch as this goes what Department of Public Instruction will be maybe requiring of public school districts to impact their community in that birth to 5 cohort. Because the research stands that if you can catch them and get them in early with that literacy, we're going to have those dividends later. And so I think it'll be astute of us to watch that. So moving on then to letter E, strategic plan goal reviews with Mr. Haglund, professional learning supporting best instructional practices and leadership. Good evening.
Hello. How are you guys? Okay, well, last time I was here, I talked about the Striving Readers Grant and that aspect of the strategic plan. So tonight, I just wanted to update everybody on 2 other goals that come under the professional development and professional learning category, and that's the professional learning to support instructional practices and leadership. The first thing there was formalizing a professional development plan for each school year. One of the first steps there, we've always had a professional development plan, but our plan has basically been an outline of the activities that we do from year to year. So with the strategic plan, we decided we want to have more input in that process and have that become a little bit more formalized. So we have developed a professional development committee. That committee is made up of 11 teachers and administrators from the district, also 1 support staff member. And they will be reviewing. We just established our goal was to have that established in October, and we have that established, so we're good to go there. But we have our first meeting at the end of this month, and during that process, that committee will be looking at professional development activities that we currently have, we currently are doing, things that we have to look forward to complete commitments for different grants and so forth, and just keeping up on best practices and the instructional needs of our students. And they will come back, and that group will make a recommendation or have an initial plan ready by May 15th to be submitted to staff, communicated to staff about what our plans are for professional development activities for the next school year. And that's going to be a little chunk of work. So working with the Striving Readers budget is a big piece of that in the next couple of years. Then we also have Title II money for professional development that falls into as well. So that's one piece of that. Another area was the establishment of the Teacher Leadership Academy, the TLA. We have that underway. Dr. Leck and Dr. Flowers from Fargo, from NDSU, are leading that. We have 9 teachers in the district involved in that project. One of the nice things about that project is that that because it is our own leadership academy, they deal with issues related to Jamestown Public Schools, and their work is, centered around a lot of the things that are on our strategic plan at this point. Each one of the participants in that TLA is required to complete 110 hours of practicum work. Of those 110 hours, at least 55 of those hours have to be related directly to activities in the strategic plan. So we'll get a lot of work out of them. It'll help them with their, learning the ins and outs of educational leadership, but also it'll help our district a lot with getting some work done that just gives us a lot more opportunity to use more views, but also a lot more man hours to complete some of those tasks. The other thing that I just wanted to mention was on the one of the areas of that professional learning was looking at support and professional development for our support staff. So we do, as I mentioned, we do have one person on that professional development committee that is a support staff member. So we look forward to having that input and making sure that we coordinate what we're doing there with James River Special Education Unit. Has a big impact on what we do with our paraprofessionals and support staff as well. So there's a lot of coordination, a lot of cooperation that needs to take place there. So I think those are the things I wanted to mention. So any questions?
Thank you, Joe. Any questions, Diane?
Thank you, Joe. I wondered about the Teacher Leader Academy. When you mentioned a practicum, 110 hours, will any of that be spent in the classroom? And could you paint a picture of what the practicum will do, an example of what they'd be helping us with on the strategic plan?
Sure. Dr.
I'll
Leck?
probably, yeah, we'll have Dr.
I'll
Leck answer
default.
that.
If you look back in the past, I have provided a copy of the practicum handbook, and you can certainly look back. But a portion of those hours are devoted to policy, where for example, they would look through a policy that we're looking to review. They would have to get samples from other districts and make a recommendation. And actually, some of those recommendations will come from the TLA to this board to say, we need to adopt the new FFM policy. And here's the recommendations. This is why we're looking to change this policy or amend this policy, or we reviewed this policy. It seems to be meeting the needs of the district and best practice. So there's some district-associated things like that. There is the what I'm calling operationalizing the strategic plan. That's what Joe referenced earlier. That is one example that I was just working with a TLA member on is in our strategic plan, we want to target a learning management system. Well, to go through that, to start using a learning management system, well, you have to select one. I mean, it's a pretty big process. You want to make sure that if you're devoting money to a learning management system, that it's the right one that does exactly what you want it to do. And so the TLA member would co-lead a selection group, similar to what we did with Marzano when we selected a teacher evaluator. We had a large group of stakeholders come together. They would lead that process along with central office to review different learning management systems and make a recommendation on which one is the best one and why. So that's part of that 55 hours. If you look through it, we have a very, very robust strategic plan that has a lot of different initiatives in it. And like Joe referenced, that's a lot of man hours. And so having this volunteer army to come in and help support that work is really important. And so then you have, beyond that, there's still other stuff that's important. And so there's 35 hours of that 110 that are devoted to other activities. That could be holding a community meeting on an area of importance. That could be, what are some of the other ones we have? Creating a program that makes students aware of the profession of teaching. So things that we can do that enhance the work of school. And at any time, somebody in that other category could suggest a topic that we didn't even consider. And up to 25 of those hours can be used outside of the school because we think the leadership is so important in it. Leadership isn't just about what happens in school. That could be, and I know we have a couple different TLA members in Jamestown that have used 25 hours, but if there's a leadership opportunity that exists at the city, that exists in a professional capacity somewhere else, I'll give you an example. Cody Mickelson serves on the Teachers Fund for Retirement Board alongside me. I asked if he would be willing to take on a rewrite of our policy and our governance structure. And that's 25 of his hours is devoted to that. It's not in school, but it impacts the profession. And through that process, he learns an awful lot about policy, learns that does become applicable to the school. So lots of different options to make sure that it's relevant for teachers, for the people in the academy.
Any follow-up?
Yes, a follow-up. I would just encourage and hope for one of the teachers in the academy or more to address behavioral health issues because it is such a huge, problem right now, and we've had a lot of attention devoted to it. So just an idea, and it sounds like it'd be a good fit.
Yeah, we do have school culture and climate is involved in the other capacity. It's actually included in our mandatory 20 hours too.
Thank you. Any other questions for Joe related to our professional learning and support? Thank you, Mr. Haglund.
Thank you.
So moving on in our agenda, we have nothing under old business, so moving into new business. There's nothing under activities, building and grounds, curriculum assessment and instruction, so we will go into finance. Can I have, letter A, an approval of the library collection grant in an amount of $2,000? Motion by Melissa, second by Greg. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on to letter B, the approval of the FM Area Foundation CTE grant in the amount of $2,400. Motion by Roger. Second by Jason. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on to letter C, the approval of the Building Tomorrow's Leaders Grant in the amount of $8,820. Motion by Greg, second by Roger. Any discussion? Heidi?
I would just like to thank all those, Dr. Leck and all those that have worked on these grants and bring funds into our district to not only assist with our bottom line, but also to provide some unique opportunities for our students. So thank you for grants. They're kind of tedious to write and time consuming, and I appreciate their dedication to doing that.
Absolutely. Every dollar matters. Every dollar matters. With that, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on to letter D, can I have an approval of the ratification for the teachers' negotiated agreement for the 2019 through 2021 school year? Motion by Bob. Second by Heidi. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on to letter E, can I have an approval of the final budgets? Motion by Roger, second by Greg. And discussion? Sally?
The executive summary, I'll refer you to that for the general fund. I just kind of highlighted some areas, and I'll just touch base. I won't go through every line by line by line, but just highlighting the differences. In July, I did the draft. In talking about the expenditures, the 100, obviously, the salary and benefits is the largest portion of the budget since it involves staff. The salary has increased from last year to the 1920, 1819 to 1920 by $645,584. So Obviously, that reflects the increase, the board negotiation between teachers and administrator and support staff, in the non-teaching. It also reflects the addition of the kindergarten section instructor, along with Dr. Leck's discussion on the Striving Readers Grant. So we have those two instructional coaches additional and the coordinators. So that's all a part of that increase. Obviously a large part of it is the Striving Readers. And then the 200 obviously is the benefits section for all of those salaries and applicable to all the salaries. The other items that, I will let you look at, if you have questions on anything, I'd be happy to answer them. In the 500 area is this tuition, and that is a moving number at all times. It's difficult, students coming and going and their high needs, and I work closely with, Amy and the James River staff to do the best job that we can in budgeting those numbers, but it is a increasing cost in this district, so just FYI. The remainder of the items are pretty standard, supplies and equipment and, dues and fees. And the revenues, obviously the local tax dollars, and I'll talk more about when we get to the certificate of levy. We have the local dollars, the county from the coal conversion, and our state, which is 9839, which you guys are aware of, per student. And they also allocate special ed costs to us and transportation, okay? And obviously some state grants, which Dr. Leck has just talked about. And the federal dollars are our Title I, Title II, our Title IV, our IDEA B, and IDEA B preschool, and again, an influx of funds for the 3 years with the Striving Readers Grant. So this year's budget has approximately the $400,000 increase. And then, as Dr. Leck alluded to earlier, the carryover from last year due to the late approval of that grant. So another $200,000 in carryover. So that kind of is a high-level overview of the general fund. The remaining budgets stayed the same. I gave those to you, presented to you those, I can't even speak, those in July, the draft budgets. The changes in the budget were obviously the general fund budget changed, the school activity budget changed, looking at all of those expenditures, so if you have questions on that. And then the building fund. The building fund increase, looking at remodeling Jamestown North, adding expenses to that, and also purchasing lockers, a shared cost with the PTO of Gusner, purchasing lockers for Gusner. So those are the budget changes from when I presented them to you in July.
Thank you for that summary. Any questions? Dr. Leck?
I just had a comment. I wanted to thank Sally. The executive summary is something we started to do a few years ago, and we wanted to make sure that, the budget's a big document. There's a lot of pieces, and as Sally mentioned, there's fluidity to some of those pieces as we go along in the budgetary process. And I just want to thank her for doing those executive summaries. They're important. They try to give you the view that you need to know. What has changed? Why has it changed? And that's of course for the board, but those are public documents too, and to help people get a grasp of how things have changed, why they've changed. So I just want to thank Sally for doing that. I think it's a really important document, and I know it takes her time to organize that, but I think it's really important for this board and also from a transparency standpoint from the public.
Very good, thank you. All those in favor of approving the final budget, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on then to the, may I have a motion to approve the final certificate of levy? Motion by Bob. Second by Roger. Sally, discussion?
As you look at the certificate of levy, you see a dollar value along with the mills. The 70 mills is the general, portion, 10 mills for the building fund. All of those listed there. We try to be stewards of taxpayer dollars. They want it in dollars, but I always request the county to, in the value of 10 mills, so that we're transparent to the taxpayers that, we could say that dollar amount, or we could get that dollar amount, and it might be 10.5, 11, 1 or 2. And so when I present that to the county, I always, because the value of the mill fluctuates, and so that amount is a little bit higher, depending upon where that value of that mill is, but I always request that they do the value of the mill and not more, so that we are stewards of taxpayer dollars. And listed on the bottom of that page reference is just each, expenditure budget, the general, the building fund, the activities. So if you have any questions.
Thank you, Sally. Okay, and just to note that it has not changed. So, for the public. All those in favor say aye. And those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, moving on then into personnel. Can I have an approval to publish the salaries for the 2019-2020 school year? Motion by Roger, second by Greg. Any discussion? And just, Roger?
Who's requesting it?
Well, we're required to post it. It's a century code. So, any other? So this is not anyone's request, this is our obligation.
And we do this the same time every year, just for my clarification? Or
Relatively to when the negotiated agreement is decided. So then next year, it can be published a little bit earlier because we don't have to go through negotiations again, but it's relative to it. Anything else? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We have nothing under policy and procedures, so moving on to tuition. Can I have a motion to approve the tuition agreement for a pre-K Jamestown student to attend Kensal Public School for the 2019-2020 school year? Motion by Roger. Second by Melissa. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Can I have a motion to approve the tuition agreement for an 8th grade Jamestown student to attend Barnes County North School for the 2019-2020 school year? Motion by Jason, second by Melissa. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Can I have a motion to approve the tuition agreement for 2nd and 4th grade Jamestown students to attend Montpelier Public School for the 2019-2020 school year? Motion by Roger, second by Melissa. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. If you have any items for future agenda this evening, you can let us know now. Or if something comes to you. Oh, Melissa, yes.
I apologize. I meant to get this information to you earlier, but I know you had mentioned that you are going to put the referendum information in our January when we do
like a board retreat?
The board retreat. And I would like to see that addressed earlier, just so that if we did decide to do something, we could get that in June as opposed to having to do another special election.
All right. Anything else? Okay. And then if you do have something else, you can please feel free to let myself or Dr. Leck know. So meetings to be scheduled. We have the Health Insurance Committee meeting on Monday, October 14th at 3:30 in the district conference room. We have a school board meeting on Monday, October 21st at 5:15 in the Thompson Community Room. And then 4 of us currently are attending the North Dakota School Board Association Convention October 24th and 25th in Bismarck. And then we'll have another school board meeting on Monday, November 5th. So as I mentioned prior, our monthly superintendent evaluation, make sure you're doing sections 2 and 6 this month. Make sure you go all the way through to the end to hit submit, otherwise it doesn't get tabulated. And as I mentioned, Amy and I will be working, she'll be in contact with me to let me know what sections are missing, and I will get that to you as soon as possible, and I will ask for a quick turnaround on those. Yes, Jason?
Would it be appropriate, back to our items for future agendas, after the career tech ed evaluation, would it be appropriate to have a recap here by Mr. Heinert and Mr. Gaylor, and then also a discussion on how that transition is going between a full-time director and, okay, just a thought.
Yeah, I think that'd be a great. So back to school board superintendent evaluations. So if you could please watch your emails, and if Amy doesn't let me know that there's something coming in, I'll give you a phone call to remind you to get that in, because we do need to, by century code, have that all taken care of by November 15th. Yes, Bob?
Did we get delegates for the state convention straightened out?
All 4 that are going to be attending.
Okay.
This time, yeah.
All right. Heidi?
Just thank you, Amy, for your patience with us.
Yes. Okay. Anything further? Okay. Don't forget to right-click on your agenda to do your adjournment assessment, and with that, the meeting is adjourned.